Hi. In this lecture, we will understand customer requirements based on subnetting and try to provide the resolution. Let's check the customer requirement. The customer has a subnet 192.168.100.0/24. He does not want to keep single subnet for entire network. Therefore, he needs experts' advice to break this large subnet into pieces. But make sure each subnet must contain at least 60 IP addresses. Well, let's check whether we have received enough information from the customer or not. We have a subnet ID which is 192.168.100.0. It has a CIDR value 24 for the subnet. We have information of hosts count detail for the newly subnet which is 60. Well, first of all, we all know this is a Class C network and we need to check the network bits and host bits according to the default base mask. If we consider the default base mask according to the Class C network, there are 24 bits reserved for the network portion and 8 bits are reserved for the host portion. Now we have to check how many bits are needed to be borrowed from the host portion. First, I need to check the indexing for the host bits, then we will check the subnetting equation. We have a total 8 off bits, 0 to 7. Let's turn on the bits one by one in host portion and check whether we meet the customer requirement. If we turn on one bit, then we will have 128 IP addresses in a subnet and it will exceed the customer requirement. Let's turn on one more bit. It will have 64 IP addresses in a subnet. Exactly, this is what we need because the customer needs to have 60 IP addresses in one subnet. Well, we have achieved the target, but we need to work more to give the complete IP details to the customer. What were the actual host bits count? It was 8. How many bits do we need to borrow? It is 2. Now how many host bits do we have? Total 6 bits. Let's use our calculation and check the subnet's details. We all know the IP address is 32 bits long. According to our IP address, it has 26 bits reserved for the network portion and 6 bits are free for the host portion. Now the exponentiation of 2 to the power of 6 is 64. It means we have a total 64 IP addresses in our bucket. As I told you in a previous video, all the IP addresses cannot be assigned to host devices. We need to remove 2 IP addresses from the total count, one is for network address and one is for broadcast address. Now 62 IP addresses can be used for the hosts within the subnet. One IP address is reserved for network ID and one IP address is reserved for broadcast address. We are talking about only for the one subnet. Now it's time to check the number of subnetworks created post borrowing the 2 bits from the host portion. Let's calculate. How many networks do we have post borrowing the 2 bits from the host portion? It was just one network. And how many bits do we have borrowed? It is 2. Now the exponentiation of 2 to the power of 2 is 4. It means one network broke down to 4 subnetworks and each subnetwork has 64 IP addresses. Now let's check each subnetwork range. Remember, the counting always begins from 0. The first subnetwork range will be 0 to 63. The second subnetwork range will be 64 to 127. The third subnetwork range will be 128 to 191. And the fourth subnetwork range will be 192 to 255. I have added the table of all 4 subnetworks for your reference. The table contains the network IP address, the first IP address, the last IP address, and the broadcast address. Now, it's time to check the subnet mask for the newly created subnetworks. Well, it is very easy. How many bits we borrowed from the 4th octet? It's 2, right? And what was the original subnet? It was 255.255.255.0. As you all know, we have made changes in the 4th octet. So the subnet value has to be changed in the 4th octet and no need to make changes in the first 3 octets. We had turned on 2 bits in the 4th octet. In this case, the subnet mask will be 255.255.255.192 because we have to perform a sum for both the corresponding values. Now for all the subnetworks, the subnet mask is 255.255.255.192. That's it. The next requirement is for you to resolve. Read the question carefully and try to split the network as per customer's requirement. See you in the next video. Bye.